It's 5 o'clock, and I think we should get started. We'll just kind of let people join in as they join in. Can everybody hear me that's here so far? I just want to make sure that my audio's happening. Cool. Okay. I'm so happy that everybody's here today. I just want to start by saying that we are going to try to take questions and comments at the end of the presentation. So if you do have a question or comment, please place it in the chat with the word question or comment in all caps, and we'll try to get to them at the end. So Wayne, if you could take me to the first slide, that would be great. Okay, so right before, like probably the day before I gave this presentation in October, I was taking a walk and I saw that someone had taken the time to paint this message on a piece of eucalyptus bark and post it in a piece of, on a eucalyptus tree to, you know, just for somebody to find. And it felt sort of like auspicious that it would be a nice thing to show you guys at the beginning of the presentation. So I'm just really hoping that this presentation will be a rainbow in your cloud today. Okay, so Wayne, if you could please stop sharing your screen for a moment. And I just want to say, introduce Wayne, who is the Chief Hairball Detangler and Chief Operations Officer of Field Team 6. He's wonderful and so kind to just be my slide elf today, being just wonderfully helpful, and I feel like I'm in great hands. So thank you, Wayne, for doing that. So I want to introduce myself. I am a multi-hyphenate Czar for Field Team 6, meaning I am in charge of a few different departments. Zoom, although you wouldn't know it at how bad I am at being on Zoom. Mobilize, I'm running the postcarding program if anyone's interested in getting involved, and I also work on the newsletter. The way this presentation kind of came about, back in the days when we were all kind of like going full force, just trying to get rid of Trump and figure out what the hell we were going to do, my friend Cathy O'Krent gave a lecture to our action group about activism fatigue. And some of the tips that she gave me, one in particular, really stuck with me and have actually carried me all the way until now. And this had to be at least 4 years ago. So, and given the times that we're finding ourselves in right now, I really think that we're all due for a refresher course. So whatever the real reason is that you're feeling burnt out, you're overwhelmed, exhausted, angry, we really hope that you'll take away at least one thing from this meeting that will help you continue with this important work of participating in and strengthening our democracy. So I also want to introduce my partner in crime, Cathy O'Krent, with whom I created this presentation. She has been volunteering with Field Team 6 since 2019. She works in a hospital chaplaincy, and of course, hospital chaplains experience what you might call burnout or fatigue with what they deal with on a day-to-day basis quite a bit. So when she created the original presentation, she applied these tenets that she uses in her work to activists. So she helps them with various initiatives related to self-care. She's going to lead us in a quick grounding exercise as we get started. So over to you, Cathy.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad you are here, and it's great to be with everybody in this way. So we'll begin by doing a little grounding exercise, which can help, you know, when we have racing thoughts and we feel overwhelmed, that tends to occur up here in our body, like a lot right here. So just for a few minutes, we're going to practice shifting our attention downward as a little bit of an antidote to that. So sit comfortably in your chair. And if it's comfortable for you to close your eyes, let your eyes close gently, or just soften your gaze in front of you. Let's begin with 3 slow, deep belly breaths, all the way down into your belly. because anxious breathing tends to be way up high in the throat. And when we breathe slowly and deeply like this, it's a signal to our mind and our bodies that this is a time to relax and recharge. Nothing to do and nowhere to go right now. So start to become aware of your feet. And if focusing on your feet isn't comfortable for you for some reason, maybe your hands. You could do this exercise with your hands. What do your feet feel like on the floor? Maybe you have shoes on, maybe you're barefoot. Where are your feet in relation to your body? What does the ground beneath it feel like? Can you notice your toes? It's hard to feel all 5 toes individually, but give it a try. And what does the arch of your foot feel like? Is it the same or different from what the toes feel like? Let's redirect the attention now to where your bottom is hitting the chair. Gravity is holding you firmly in place. Maybe you can feel the chair on your back as you breathe in and out. Can you feel your ribs expanding in the back? Your bottom on the chair. You are here right now. You are really here right now. And as our exercise comes to a close, return your attention to the room. Maybe one final deep breath as you blink open your eyes. And bring your calmer, better self to this workshop. And let's do some joyful activism together. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Cathy. That was great. I feel much better. Okay, now I want to introduce Field Team 6's founder, Jason Berlin. He's one of the people that inspires me to keep going with this work. He started this organization that just keeps moving forward through all of this with joy and humor. So one of the things that can cause me to feel activism fatigue is this idea that our activism is futile, that it's having no effect. And I've noticed that as Democrats, we almost never gloat. We almost never celebrate our wins. We just sort of look out to the next challenge that we're facing. And I'm certainly guilty of it myself. I have a Facebook page where I post actions that people can do. And I've been doing that since 2016. And after we defeated the California gubernatorial recall soundly, my post was, congratulations, guys. Now we can get back to freaking out about all that other stuff. So we're all guilty of it. And yet reflecting on all that we've accomplished is incredibly motivating in continuing on. So I'd like to introduce Jason, who's going to remind us of some of the wins you've all been a part of and share something that inspires him to continue with his activism.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Sharon and Cathy, for leading this amazing event. When I think about, and yes, I will absolutely, I'll do all the gloating you need. Thank you also, everyone on this call, just for being here. It's so important. Sharon and Cathy, I think both said this, but I'm Jason Berlin, founder of Field Team 6. I forget to introduce myself, so I got to make sure. When I think about how we activists are supposed to heal while doing the work, I don't know how many of you have seen Mad Max Fury Road, but it's a great movie. It features a lot of scenes of people on vehicles that are going, 60 to 120 miles an hour, fixing them. Something goes wrong in the vehicle, and you have to fix it while it's going 100 miles an hour. And they do it all the time in this movie. I don't recommend that. That's not safe at all. But that's us trying to heal while we're going 100 miles an hour. It's a challenge. That's why we need an event like this. And thank you so much for holding this again. What I try to center myself in when I'm feeling overwhelmed, which is a lot, is the amazing facts that we've helped bring about. So I know that a lot of people here have probably been doing activism their whole lives for decades. I'm a baby. I'm class of 2016. I was a TV writer for 18 years. Then Trump got elected, and I gave up my career and threw myself into volunteering and organizing, like so many of you, like so many people across the country who changed their lives. And after working with Swing Left and the Democratic Party of California, and the army of volunteers that we helped rally, who, by the way, were almost all women, as is the resistance across the country, who just saved the world and continue to. So after we helped register over 6,000 Democrats in Southern California and helped flip 5 congressional seats and helped take back the House in 2018, my job ended with the party, but I could not disband the army. I couldn't, the band had to stay together. All these passionate, dedicated people I had met, and I wanted to see how much good trouble we could get into on a nationwide scale. So I started Field Team 6 with the stated mission: register Democrats, save the world, so that we could expand to 12 target states and see what we could do. That first year, so that was about a month after the midterms, and I made the website over a few all-nighters myself. I don't know how to make a website. The website we have now is not that website. It's much better, thank God. That first year, 2019, we went broke about 30 times. We would hold a backyard fundraiser once a month or so. That was more like a rent party. And if we were lucky, make back the money we'd already spent the month before. Our existence was not assured at all. Expenses were going on my personal credit card. But we did survive. We did survive. People kept on answering the call and joining up and contributing and volunteering. And after narrowly surviving 2019, we went on to raise $1.2 million in 2020 and spent very close to all of it, or 90%. We also were blessed with over 10,000 volunteers who stepped up across the country and did over 40,000 shifts in 2020 alone. And because of those insane volunteer hours and donor dollars, despite a worldwide pandemic, we were able to reach out to over 15 million people, develop the most muscular, creative, multifaceted digital program I know of, and we were able to help register almost 3 million swing state Democrats that helped exile the fast food fascist to Mar-a-Lago and helped miraculously against 1,000,000 to 1 odds flip the Senate in the Georgia runoffs. And that was all from our living rooms. That was from our chairs. How badass is that? There was a global pandemic. Everything was shutting down. Organizations were dying. All of you, and volunteers across the country, and not just in Field Team 6, of course, the greater resistance, of course, led by organizers and voters of color, especially women, said, okay, we're not giving up. Are we quitting? Are you kidding? We're going to turn all our homes into hubs of activism and shoot trajectories of phone calls, texts, postcards, emails, social media posts out from every home and win anyway. It's not often that a democracy gets to the edge of fascism and comes back from it. We did that. In doing that, we literally saved the world. That's every single volunteer. You saved the world. That is a literal fact. So don't forget that. That also shows that we can do it again, which we need to. What we did, we restored the blue wall in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, took back the Senate in Georgia, elected Joe Biden president, Kamala Harris, our first woman of color vice president. And what started as the ragtag army of unlikely heroes, the resistance, is now a well-trained Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines of organizers. The Women's March was the biggest protest in history and the starter pistol that activated the resistance. And then last summer, 2 summers ago now, despite a worldwide pandemic, Black Lives Matter became the new biggest protest in world history. We also now have national titans swing left, helping win elections like we are, and Indivisible helping make sure the Dems we elect do the right thing. We also have the California recall landslide victory that happened despite our worst fears. We won that. We defeated that recall 25 minutes after close of polls. First round knockout, spanking is the right word for that. That's what we needed to deliver. And on the big level, the Biden-Harris administration wins are enormous and growing all the time. I know we are focused on, and we should be, making sure Democrats deliver with the Build Back Better bill and with federal voting rights legislation. But we do need to acknowledge that they passed the most massive stimulus program in decades, instituted the first UBI, Universal Basic Income for families with children, helping cut child poverty close to in half. We're restoring America's profile in the world. We removed the trans ban from the military, undid the Muslim ban, created a task force to reunite families separated at the border. Thank God. I know there's still a long way to go with the border, but we're moving in the right direction. Have gotten 70%, I believe, at last count of the country vaccinated. These are all huge, and the things that we just got with that first bipartisan infrastructure bill are also huge and not to be taken for granted. So whenever it seems like changing this world is impossible, remind yourself it's not. In fact, you've already done it. We got to do it again now. One thing that's my driving force, I'm sorry, I've gone on too long as usual, but I remind myself that demographics are coming to help us in a tectonic shift that no Republican can stop. That's young people, people of color, single women. They were the rising American electorate. They're now the new American majority, and we are growing every single day. They don't just tolerate our differences, they celebrate our diversity. They're all colors and creeds and sexual orientations. They're kind and smart and creative and badass. And they are the American promise that we have never yet achieved. They're the democracy we've dreamed of. So the future is coming. We just have to meet it halfway and hold off the Republicans till we do. So keep going. It's working. It's working. You helped make my personal dream come true beyond my wildest imagination. And it's our common dream now. So thank you. Mwah. Thank you for keeping me sane and inspiring me, all of you.
Jason, thank you for keeping me sane and inspiring me. Wayne, I'm going to ask you now to spotlight me. not trying to be like that, but okay. So let's get to the tips and tricks here for dealing with our activism fatigue. So why are we all feeling like this? I can tell you why I was starting to feel like this. So I feel like during Trump, during those years, we were just like full speed ahead for 4 years. We had a goal. This goal was getting rid of this guy, get him kicked out of the White House. And after we defeated him, there was this kind of feeling, at least for me, of like, wait, we're not done. And I knew intellectually that this was going to happen, that Trump was a symptom of a much greater problem. And that of course his defeat was not going to make everything okay again. But it was hard to wrap my head around. It was very hard for me to realize that I couldn't just stop. I couldn't just go back to being complacent. And that this was going to be an ongoing thing for, who knows how long. And thanks to, Cathy and her tips, I realized that the only way to really make this an ongoing thing for me, activism, would be to make it like going to the gym or going to the therapist. So you'll hear me use the word sustainable a lot, because I'm going to talk a lot about how we can make activism sustainable in our lives. I think when we were all going full force for 4 years, I was running on fumes. And I realized that there was no way I could go at that pace, knowing what we still face, as sort of a, like I say, an ongoing day-to-day problem. So I'm going to talk a lot about how we're going to make activism a sustainable part of our lives. I do want to say, kind of on a side note, based on something Jason brought up, I do think that the reason Republicans are going so hardcore right now is that they do see the writing on the wall. They see that the country's demographics are changing, that there are more of us than there are of them. Their policies are unpopular. And so their fervor is actually another example of the fact that your activism is working. And also, I was just listening to a really cool podcast that you may want to listen to called Scene on Radio, SCENE. I would listen to all seasons, but especially season 5, which talks a lot about the fact that history is filled with backlashes, just like the one we're experiencing right now. So I don't know if many of you read Heather Cox Richardson's newsletter, but I love it and I read it every day. And I strongly recommend that you do. Anyway, she's been writing it, I think, for about 2 years now, and it's a daily newsletter, and from the perspective of an American historian. So I was reading her newsletter recently, and she was summarizing the last 2 years of doing her newsletter, and she was kind of listing crisis after crisis that all of us went through. And I looked at it and I went, this is a collective trauma. And one of the things that she wrote was, if you are tired, you have earned the right to be, and yet you are still here reading. So that spoke to me, because it meant that something is still keeping us here. Something is keeping me here. You stepped up in 2016, and as Jason mentioned, possibly way before 2016. Excuse my crazy dog in the background. And so that part of you is still in there and just kind of needs help coming back out and feeling motivated to go. So even putting this presentation together, Cathy and I felt re-inspired ourselves. It's stuff that we all already know, and we just kind of need to see it and be reminded again. And you may need something different to get it out. So we're going to throw out a bunch of different ideas today, and you can pick what you like and leave the rest, as they say in 12-step programs. Okay, Wayne, if you could start sharing your screen again and post the next slide. Was someone asking what was the name again of the podcast? It's called Scene on Radio, SCENE, and it's amazing. Okay, so if you could move, yeah, okay. So the first slide is about acceptance. This is a hugely important foundation to stand on in order to move forward in action that feels grounded and strong. So one part of acceptance is accepting however you're feeling right now. Makes sense that you're exhausted, because the work of justice is literally countercultural. It's opposing power. Makes sense that you're tired. Like, accepting the feelings, feeling them, whatever they are, is so important in terms of putting all of us in a real grounded place from which to act. So this means if you're feeling angry, sad, afraid, tired, just name it, accept it, feel it, go through it. Don't try to fight it. The other part of acceptance that I struggle with is accepting that the world is the way it is. Many of us didn't realize it until November of 2016, how the world is. But now that we know, we can't not do something about it. When Trump was first elected, I spent so much time grieving, just wishing I could literally get into a time machine. I would wake up each morning and it was grief. It was like someone had died. And I would wake up each morning and remember that this had happened. And I couldn't believe it. And I wouldn't accept it. And I was really, really suffering as a result. And I was in constant fight or flight mode. Yes, it scared me into action. And I'm glad for that. But now that we have this ongoing situation, abject fear is not a good motivation for your health or your long-term ability to sustain the activism. So it wasn't easy, but once I was able to accept that, okay, this is what's happening in the world, I was able to take action from a much saner place. So I need to remind this to myself a lot, because it's easy to look at this country and just not be able to believe what's happening here. But the first step to ending that kind of suffering is saying, okay, but it is happening. Let's accept it and move forward from there. So it's not a passive place to be. It's just a place of grounding and foundation. So it's not passive. It just provides a solid foundation from which you can take action. Next slide, please. Okay, take a longer perspective. We have to remember that justice is a marathon and not a sprint. Excuse the cliche. This work of creating a more just society spans generations. Think about the civil rights movement. You think about women's suffrage. We can each do a part of the work to move things forward, but we did not start this, and we might not necessarily be the ones to complete it. We just need to do our part. Now, if you're not following Terry Canfield on Twitter, I highly recommend that you do. Although later I'm going to contradict myself and recommend that you stay off of Twitter. But if you can really hone it down to the good Twitter people, then go ahead and be on it. Terry Canfield is amazing. She does a blog. And this is a great post I'm going to read a little piece of. And I hope that you'll find helpful. And I'm going to post a link to this blog so that you can read the whole thing. I'm going to post this in the chat here. But I'm going to read you a little excerpt from it. When liberals ask, when will this end? They are not seeing this as an ongoing struggle. They think one day the anti-democratic forces will be beaten back and liberal democracy will prevail and we'll all live happily ever after. They also tend to think there's a magic bullet, something that someone can do to end fascism once and for all if only they would just do it. People thought fascism was beaten after World War II. It wasn't. It just went underground and regrouped. As long as we have a democracy, there will be forces trying to undermine the democracy. Once you accept this painful truth, you stop feeling shocked and exhausted each time the right wing or anyone under the spell of a demagogue begins attacking democratic processes. This doesn't mean we accept them. They are dangerous. But if we know they're going to keep attacking, we pace ourselves for the long haul and we don't wear ourselves out with each destructive lie. And then she says, find a way to contribute. She has a place for actions that you can go look on her website if you want to do something about it. So that's called Things to Do. Okay, next slide, please. Take breaks. This one is very hard for me, and it sounds very simple, and it's very hard to do, but it needs to happen, and it needs to happen without guilt. There is an ebb and flow to the movement and to people's moods. So while you're ebbing, you can have faith that someone else is flowing. And it will also bring you back to do the work better. So when you take a break, you'll actually be able to come back to it with your whole self and not really just part of yourself or spreading yourself thin. And also this involves self-care. So take care of yourself. That means eating well, sleeping, exercising. I don't know if you're guilty of feeling guilty every time you do something nice for yourself, knowing how much suffering is out there in the world, but you are doing the righteous work of strengthening our democracy. So you can't break down. Would you not maintain your car? You must maintain yourself. So Wayne, can you present the next slide, please? This is related to self-care. As Audre Lorde, great warrior, once said, self-care is not an act of indulgence. It's an act of political warfare. So I'm going to post a PDF in the chat called 50 Ways to Take a Break, just to give you some ideas of ways that you can take a break too. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is kind of, remember why you're doing the work. I think it's easy to get caught up in all the news, all the things to get angry about, all the nitty gritty of what's going on, and to like forget about the big picture of why are we doing this? What do you care about? Justice, you know, humanity. I have a friend who says, I hate people, but I love humanity. It's like, whatever works for you. Just remember it, think about it. It's very helpful to reflect on these bigger ideas because it's easy to think short term about the day-to-day crises. It's easy to get overwhelmed, to get tunnel vision. But it's really important to remember that the work of activism itself is also beautiful, meaningful. For some people, it's spiritual. And it's work that connects all of us to one another and can really bring us joy and a sense of purpose. So whatever helps remind you of your reason for doing this work, create it, write it down, hang it near your desk, frame it, make it a mantra, whatever, just don't lose sight of it. I made a collage that was really helpful to me and I look at it every so often. So also, if you would like to, you can type in the chat your reason for doing this work, your vision of a beautiful world, or words that inspire you to keep going. Okay, so those were some kind of mental approaches to staying active. So now I'm going to talk about some practical steps you can take to make your activism sustainable. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is kind of about taking baby steps. There's a lot of cliches around this topic, basically breaking a seemingly impossible task down into a series of small steps. So when you think about everything that's going on in the world, it can be very overwhelming. It can make you want to just give up because what can you possibly do? But if you kind of just take the steps for what's in front of you, so you can call it baby steps. I get this really cool daily newsletter from an amazing activist named Jessica Craven. It's called Chop Wood, Carry Water. It means the same thing. Do the next right thing, which is what Glennon Doyle always says. Bird by bird is something Anne Lamott, and now I just watched Ted Lasso and he said it too. So it's this idea of breaking this very small task into a series of small steps. And again, and the fact that we're, you know, like each one of these steps is like a raindrop, and you can see yourself as a raindrop in a giant sea of other people that are doing the same work. So you don't have to feel like it's all on you and you're so overwhelmed. I'm going to post another link in the chat. This is to a, it's sort of a pep talk / action newsletter about small deeds that you can do to be of service. Okay, the next slide is my favorite piece of advice. This is the piece of advice that has kept me going. I don't know why I'm burying it in the middle of the presentation, but okay, I did. It's grab the low-hanging fruit. So this is the piece of advice that Cathy gave me, I don't know how many years ago, and it's still keeping me going. It is the thing. It is the main thing for me that really, of all the things she said, grabbed me the most. And of course, grabbing the low-hanging fruit is usually like something you're not supposed to do. Like it's telling a dumb joke or, you know, just going to the kind of lowest common denominator. But in this case, it's referring to do what you like, do what you're good at so that you'll keep doing it. It seems like obvious and common sense, but it's not. You know, a lot of times when I first started with doing this activist stuff, I put myself into places where I was uncomfortable. I was doing things I didn't really like. I didn't really want to do. Like, I know some people enjoy phone banking. I didn't really like it. I would kind of sit there and go, please don't pick up, please don't pick up, please don't pick up. And it was like, it was terrible. It wasn't going to be a thing that I was going to keep doing. But anyway, but then I found other things that I really enjoy doing, like this, what we're doing right now. So pick what you like and what you're good at activism wise. Are you good at knocking doors? Do you like calling people? Are you good at fundraising? Are you an organizer? Do you like calling people? Do you like texting people? Do you like writing postcards? Do you like talking to strangers? Like Jason loves talking to strangers. Are you a good writer? Like there's so many things you can do to help the resistance that aren't just what you think. And then if you do something you like, you're most likely to keep it up. So, you know, like when Cathy and I were coming up with this presentation, I was talking about how like my entire life, I've tried to work out in the morning. Like I've tried to wake up before work and go work out. And I hate it and it's awful and I'll never keep it up. And it's like, she said, well, the best exercise is the exercise you'll do. And this applies to activism too. The best activism is the activism you'll actually do. So once you figure out what it is that you like and what you're good at, then just try and do it on some sort of regular basis that you can sustain. So if it's monthly, weekly, daily, whatever you can sustain. Something's always better than nothing. So if right now making a $5 a month sustaining donation is all that you can do that. And then know that you're doing something and trust that there is someone else out there who likes doing the thing that you don't like. Let what you do be enough. Let who you are be enough. Live your life. I just talked to a friend who's on this call today and who said she read this article in the New York Times who said a bunch of the people in the resistance went back to brunching and they kind of stopped doing their resistance stuff. And I think what I want to say about that and what I said to her was that I think you can keep brunching. I think the whole point is finding a way to work the activism into your life as a regular thing that you do day to day, same as brushing your teeth and going to the gym and going to brunch with friends, because I'm going to talk about how that's also important to go have fun and do things with people that you care about. The low-hanging fruit idea also applies to issues and organizations. So it can be overwhelming because there are so many issues that we have to address right now. And you get a million emails a day from different organizations, and it just makes you go kind of on like a deleting and an unsubscribing spree. If you try to work with every great progressive organization, you're going to burn yourself out. And your time, energy, and money are limited. So choose the progressive organizations and that are working on the issues that you care about the most and are doing it well, and then focus on those. Let them guide you to your activism opportunities. Keep it simple and sustainable for yourself. So for me, it's Field Team 6's mission of registering Democrats. And I especially like it because it covers a lot of the other issues that we care about, like voting rights, immigration, climate change, and racial equality. Next slide, please, Wayne. Replace worry with action. Okay, it's easy to get worried. It's very easy to just worry about what the future can bring. But worrying is really all about a future that only exists in your mind. And it can be exacerbated by horrific predictions that we read online, which is going to bring me to my next point. And worry doesn't actually accomplish anything except preventing you from sleeping, bringing your blood sugar up, making you miserable. All of the time we spend worrying could be spent making calls, sending texts, knocking on doors, or whatever low-hanging fruit you decide to grab. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a big one. It's hard. We all have phones. Manage your news intake. So my feeling is that I've always felt like, but I want to be informed. I want to know everything that's going on. Otherwise, I'm not an active part of this democracy. Yes, we want to be informed. So if you're doing the work, you don't need to continually remind yourself of the threat. You want to be informed, but you don't want to get overwhelmed. So if you can find a quick way to get the news you need in the least upsetting way so that you have the time and energy to do your activism, that's what I would recommend. These days, I get my news from 3 newsletters. I read Heather Cox Richardson, Robert Hubble, and I read Crooked Media's What a Day newsletter. And I feel like I get a really good overview of what's going on. And also, I think it's important to remember that when we read the news, we sort of make that the be-all, end-all of what's going on. But remember, the news is not everything. There are a lot of things going on, such as grassroots activism, that are not covered by the news. It's easy to forget that the news is put together by people who have an agenda to grab eyeballs. I don't want to start a conspiracy theory here. My father was a journalist, but I mean, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get you to click on things and pull you in. Next slide, please. Send perfectionism packing. Okay, this is another waste of your mental energy. So if you fail to meet your standards of what your activism is supposed to look like or what you think it's supposed to look like, forgive yourself for being human. Redirect your thinking toward how you can recharge and refresh yourself for another day of activism. Perfectionism, I learned in my anti-racist training that perfectionism actually comes from white supremacist culture. So if you are practicing perfectionism, you're actually perpetuating white supremacy. So know that. And of course, remember that perfect is the enemy of very good. So we're all about love and dignity here, and that includes toward yourself. So be good to yourself. Next slide, please. There's always another path. Okay, so remember, there's always something we can do next, always. To quote another excerpt from Terry Canefield's blog, So the answer to what happens if they win is we work on getting out again. It's very easy for us to get caught up in the end of the world fear mongering. I cried when Trump was elected. I thought it was all over, but we rose up, we defeated him. We all showed up at the airports to fight the Muslim ban. Pro-choice activists in Texas blew up all the whistleblower sites. Like, it's not over till it's over. And even then it's not over. We're still here. We're all still going to be here no matter what happens. So it's easy to like read news and be like, oh my God, if this happens, then we're screwed and it's all over. But it's never really over because we're all still here and we're all still able to do the work. I think that the fear motivates people in the short term, but we are talking about sustainability and it's just not a sustainable tactic. So don't forget that you shouldn't underestimate the creativity and resourcefulness of our movement. The grassroots is powerful. Remember all that we've accomplished. Okay, next slide, please. This is kind of the like point of this whole presentation. It's basically saying, put your focus and energy into what you can control and let go of what you can't. You can only do what you can do. So take the steps that you can take and then let go. Okay, next slide, please. You are not alone. It's so easy to think that we feel alone during this pandemic. It's really easy to sit at your computer and be online and reading the news and just feeling like, oh my God, this is all on me and I'm all alone. But when we were all marching to oppose Trump and his policies, when we were showing up at the airport, when we were marching in support of racial justice, it was so easy to see and be encouraged by the fact that we were part of this huge movement. The threats felt imminent and it was easy to get out and go. And now the threat just feels like this constant undercurrent that feels like it's never going to end. And I think that the isolation from the pandemic is causing us to forget that all these other people are out there doing this work. So don't forget, there are millions of us doing this work. There are millions of us as concerned and as passionate as you are. And as Jason pointed out, there are more of us than there are of them. So remember that by attending events like this, either virtual, now we're able to start getting out in person, marches, postcard parties, phone banks, whatever. It will energize your activism. Have faith. There are others out there doing this work, believing what you believe, taking action, and you are not responsible for fixing the world all by yourself. So the next slide, please. Okay, joy. This is a really hard one too. It seems weird, but it's a hard one. And it's one of the reasons I stick with Field Team 6. It's like self-care. It's like, how can I feel joy when there's so much suffering in the world? How can we laugh at a time like this? How can I take a break? How can I take care of myself? Cultivate joy specifically as a form of resistance. I have learned from the organizers of Field Team 6 and from Black organizers specifically that joy in the face of oppression is a form of resistance. The best way to cultivate joy is to do something you love and give it your full attention. It's actually countercultural to have fun, so do it. So whether you're experiencing joy in your activism or other parts of your life, you're not being selfish, you're actually being fierce. Next slide, please. Okay, choose faith over fear. Faith is the flip side of fear. Now, I don't mean religious faith. I just mean faith that things will be okay. So why not choose to be faithful instead of fearful? Nobody knows how any of this is going to turn out. So why not choose faith instead of fear? And if you just can't bring yourself to have faith that everything's going to be okay, at least choose to be fierce rather than fearful. Take your fear and turn it into fierce warrior spirit. You are on the right side of history. You are fighting for a more just world. You are a warrior. You are powerful. You are smart. You are creative. The resistance is an army. The resistance is smart. The resistance is powerful. So you are part of a resourceful, creative movement. So go out there and kick ass. All right, my last slide. Is this, I think this is my last slide, yeah. Okay, so this is kind of goofy, but I do yoga with this YouTuber named Yoga with Adrienne. And whenever she puts me into chair pose and I want to jump out of it so badly. And just at the right moment, she always goes, "You got this." And for some reason, it just helps me continue through. So I'm just hoping that that reminder will help you too. And lastly, my slide elf, Wayne, sent me this mantra that he reads every morning that he put together with a little help from Goethe. And I wanted to read it to you before we get to the Q&A section. You are blessed to have some things that you can do that feel meaningful. However, it's best not to get carried away. You are not the chosen one. You are not going to save the world. It's not your job. It's not possible. You are an ordinary person. It's your fantasy of being important that makes you anxious. If only you do enough, if only people respond to you, then the fantasy will come true. You'll be a key player in saving the world. You fear you're not important, and the truth is you're not. But even more crucially, it's not your concern how important or insignificant you are. It's your concern to live well today. That's all. To live well by doing things that engage you, that involve giving to others, especially loved ones, and by finding time for enjoyment that worldly cares may not obliterate the sense of the beautiful which God has implanted in your soul. So congrats to Wayne for coming up with all that and for sending it to me. Thank you, because I was really excited to share this today. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. And I hope some of the things that we've shared here will help you continue with the important work that we're doing. And Wayne, if you could please stop sharing your screen and re-spotlight Cathy and Jason, and then read the first question or comment.
All right, do you want me to go over the comments and the questions?
Yes, please.
All right.
Whatever you can get to. We have about 15 minutes. So, and right. By the way, like Cathy and I, we're not like experts in all this. We just pulled this together, basically talking about things that work for us. So keep that in mind. So Matt, we respond to your questions.
So there were a lot of comments, not so many questions.
Good.
Matt Carroll was grateful to Cathy. Gravity is holding him in place. And Georgianne D'Angelo, unfortunately, we need to keep saving the world. And Sharon says, yes, that's what we will help you to do. There's a long list. It's been, this is from Katie Zukas. It's been a hard week in our local election and on about the GOP pulling out all the stops. And then the conversation, NYS, where is that, Gina? NYS, I'm not even sure, but maybe you can put it in the chat. Anybody know NYS? New York.
New York State?
New York State, is that what that is? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Cathy O'Krent, there will be losses, but that's part of activist life. The progress is cumulative and each contact makes a difference, echoed by Jason.
You know what, that's actually something that was really helpful for me to hear recently, because like Jason talked about being a baby in terms of activism. I was really upset about Virginia. And, my husband reminded me, like, people who work in politics, like, you win some, you lose some, like that's just part of it. And you keep going in spite of all that. So that was really helpful for me to hear.
Actually, can I just throw in something about, Virginia? The media just portrays it as just a giant Democratic loss and it's monolithic. And there is not nearly as much talk of the huge victories that happened on that night. We have our first Black mayor of Pittsburgh, or I think second. We have, the first Black mayor of Pittsburgh. We have a second Black mayor of New York. We have our first female mayor of Boston, who is the daughter of 2 Taiwanese immigrants. There were, in Pennsylvania, there were down ballot wins all over. Also, if you look at, Rachel Maddow did a great segment on this. She put the 5 previous administrations up, from Bush the Elder, Clinton, W, Obama, and Trump. And in each one of those 5 administrations, the year after it started, both governorships switched parties in New Jersey and Virginia. So looking at it in that context, this election actually broke that trend in that New Jersey stayed Democratic. So in the context of history, it's actually better than we should have expected.
And as our wonderful colleague Patty Crane is always talking about, messaging is so important, and talking about all the things that we've accomplished rather than all the things that the Republicans are doing wrong. And I just pulled up a tweet that came from Midas Touch that Patty had posted in a Slack channel that we're in, and it says, Georgia Democrats flipped 41 seats in 21 counties across Georgia on Tuesday. Has anyone heard the media mention this?
That's huge.
I hate to bash the media, but I also just want to remind people that there's just so much more going on than what gets reported. I mean, I even remember when we were all, phone banking and writing postcards and doing all that stuff for the midterms, nobody knew anything about that. And none of it was covered. All of the resistance work that we were doing, it was just not known. It didn't mean it wasn't going on. It just meant that nobody knew about it. And that's, I think, something that's really important for us to remember. If you are going to dive into reading the news, is having just a watchful, careful, protective point of view, not to be, in denial, but, balance, have some sense of balance when you're reading it.
Yeah, that context is crucial. And it's good to also remember that elections are binary. Progress is not. So we may win or lose any given election. That doesn't mean that progress isn't happening in the background, just raising the level of awareness. Every touch we do, it is cumulative. People we register stay registered. Consciousnesses we raise stay raised for the next election cycle. So we're always building on it.
More of the chat. A big thank you from Charlotte Hopkins, who lives in Atlanta and says, this is the boost I need. Cathy sending love and power to Atlanta.
Yay. Yay, Georgia.
Yeah, yay, Georgia.
I did want to say also, if you need a boost and you want to email me, you can. And I'm just going to put my email address in the chat because I don't care. Because I'm crazy like that. Yeah, just email me if you want to talk about anything that we've talked about today, and if you want to write postcards with Field Team 6.
Also, Sharon mentioned doing an in-person activism. I think when I really most need a boost is when I want to go out and do something, and reconnect with like-minded, hardworking people. I'm a child of Holocaust survivors. I saw, I think, 2 people who said the Holocaust is why they're doing this. Thank you, sisters. And everybody has a reason. And it's generational or ethical or just runs through their blood veins. We're all here doing this because it was something really meaningful to us.
And then Charlotte Hopkins was talking about how many people were lost in COVID and realized that every day she wakes up is a day she's been granted to make a difference. There are over 700,000 that wish they had another day. So, moving on, that's part of why the Women's March changed the world in response to talking about the Women's March and how many of us there are. In fact, we are the majority. Lots of love in the comments, back and forth. And Patty Crane says, Sharon, you're our hero for gracing us today. Just what I need to keep going. And as curious, Amir says, curious as a recovering perfectionist, why perfectionism had roots in white supremacy. A long explanation. There you go. Actual question. Yeah.
I had the same. I was very curious about this when I was starting to do anti-racist training, and I saw your question, and so I just did a quick Google search about it, and I came up with this article. I don't know if it's the best article, but you can Google it and see. It's shocking to know that the way we think things are and the way they're supposed to be, a lot of it is rooted in white supremacy. I had no idea.
Kimberly, when it's a tough day, I recite the Serenity Prayer a bazillion times to center myself that I am not the savior of the world. And then Rebecca Elliott mentioning that we stopped watching mainstream media other than our local station and switched to PBS NewsHour, and it made a huge difference in her stress level. And the climate crisis, Ellen Bridle says, is so urgent, I find it hard to handle where we are. It's hard to take a long perspective on that. And I don't know if any of you have any comment about that. The New York mayor is far from progressive, says Gina. And Cathy O'Krent says, yes, Ellen, but again, we can only do what we can do. Choose the wisest action you can discern.
Right. I think I completely agree about climate. It's incredibly overwhelming to think about. And if you're only one person, then it's like, Cathy's saying, so if the low-hanging fruit is climate change, that's the thing that you are just the most concerned about, then it's like, find that organization that's working on climate change and be that one raindrop in that sea of people that's working on that problem. And that's all you can do. You can't do, what more can you do? What more can you do than invent a giant vacuum cleaner that will like, like pull the, I just don't, it's like, this is all we can do. And I think we have to feel okay about being a raindrop and knowing that there's a sea of other people working on the same problem.
And Jamie Gulen also accepting that so many of us did everything we could in Virginia. At the end of the day, this was up to the Virginia voters. Then Georgianne, I think that Dems fall when we are not being honest about how important facts are, and that Dems are not communists or socialists. Maybe we need a 60-second PSA on what communism and socialism is, to which Cathy replies, many ways to tell the same story, and other comments on who the nonprofit media supports, and that includes NYT, which is once again, what is NYT?
New York Times.
New York Times.
New York Times. Oh my God, or silly me. All right. And Jamie pointing out historical wins in NYC, Boston, Harrisburg, Durham, Dearborn, Pittsburgh, and St. Petersburg, flips in New Hampshire. Do you think Georgia will be able to hold its wins in the next election? Charlotte.
I want to just say, like, yeah, no, I don't know, but of course, but what we saw in Georgia gives us the path forward. It was not just a major miracle, but it shows us what we can do. It shows us that when activism thresholds are raised to a certain level, they can bend the laws of space-time and give us 2 Democrats from Georgia in a runoff. So that's what we need to do for these midterms where we face steep odds. Historically, the party that comes into power tends to lose seats. History would say we will lose the Senate and House, and we need to defy history. This is how. We need to replicate Georgia nationwide. That's our mission for the next year. Raise societal awareness of this to just breathtaking levels.
Charlotte commenting that Georgians didn't win the Senate alone. This happened because the entire country pitched in. We have to do this state by state. And Georgianne responding, Georgia will win if I have anything to do with it, and I live in New Jersey.
Yay. That's the kind of attitude we need to have.
Yeah.
And I think, as Jason was saying, just tacking on to what Jason was saying, this is why the activism needs to be sustainable and why we need to be doing it now and not just during election cycles. It's like just ongoing every day. It's part of your daily life. It's part of your routine. It's brush your teeth, do your thing to save democracy, go to the gym, go to work. It's just, that's why because I think I was under the impression that while Obama was president, Republicans were quietly flipping every state house and every governorship, or a lot of them. And they were kind of playing a long game, which is what we need to be doing. And so that's why I think this is why we need to learn how to keep it sustainable, because it has to be all the time and not just when it feels like, crucial or important.
And Georgianne has an answer to Ellen. You can notice candidates who also feel strongly about climate and register voters in their districts. So the wisdom of the collective there. All right. Patty Crane to everyone. Stacey's playbook works. And a couple of comments about Stacey Abrams being a great leader. And then Jason ends it by saying, it's all of us pulling together and always taking our lead from organizers on the ground in Georgia and each state we're working from. And that about ends it for the comments. Except They keep coming in, but everybody can look.
Yeah. Okay. So we just hit 6 o'clock. So we've kept this to an hour, and I thank everybody so much for joining us. And I'm going to put my email address one more time in the chat in case anybody wants to reach out to me. If you want to copy the slides, if you just want to talk, if you want some more resources, I have tons more of this kind of stuff. Just let me know. And I wish you all the very best
And we
on your journey.
We will make we have recorded this, so that'll be.
Oh yeah, and there's a recording of this. So if someone you know missed it, or if you want to watch it again, we'll send it to you. I want to thank Jason and Cathy and Wayne too. Thank you so much to you guys, and thanks to all of you for being here.
We want to all thank you, Sharon and Cathy, for leading this amazing, super, super helpful workshop. I will be here every single time you have it.
Okay, good. I'm sure there'll be another one soon. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.